book lovers, I'm here at my office space and I'm taking time off from the busy schedule that I have to talk about a book that I thoroughly enjoyed reading recently. It's called The Mafia Bombers by Malcolm Gladwell. Always loved Malcolm Gladwell's books. He's very intellectual. He does a lot of research around the topics that he's investigating, provide a lot of facts, and allows you to kind of like imagine the journey of him discovering the topics and the truths behind everything. So Malcolm Gladwell is an amazing storyteller, and it also helps that he's also a very factual person with a very strong background in social science, and I believe that's what he studied, if I'm not mistaken. It just makes the whole reading experience very pleasurable. So I've read a couple of his books already. The last one was, of course, the book that I'm about to share, which is The Mafia Bomber, and it's an amazing book. So here are my 3 takeaways. So the first takeaway that I got was pretty much in the beginning of the book, where he was explaining how the Germans came to bomb UK. He opened up the book about the invasion, the Blitz bombing that kind of flattened England at that time, and it was very vivid for me because of the way he actually narrates the story. I didn't know about his past, but he was actually talking about a time when he was very young with his family and he was playing around in his house. There was a bomb raid that actually happened during that same time, and of course he was young, he didn't know what was coming. And what actually happened was while he was playing in his compound, the bombers were coming in, honing in at England, ready to drop the bombs. Fortunately, a lot of the bombs landed on homes, and a lot of people, of course, died from it. And a lot of bombs exploded and destroyed houses. Fortunately for him, there was a bomb that actually landed at his backyard, but it did not detonate. And he was wondering what this thing was there. Really kind of like being grounded into his backyard. It did not explode. If it would have exploded, we would probably not get any of his books today, and of course there won't be a Malcolm Gladwell, and it'll be very unfortunate for all of us. But the idea that he almost died, or he actually almost passed away, was a stroke of luck for him. A kind reminder to all of us that life is pretty much fragile. There's a lot of wars going out there, and things can happen anytime. So just be very mindful that where we are living is a very chaotic world, and mankind has actually created a lot of advanced technologies to kill each other. Strangely enough, a lot of the technologies that we have been using in our day-to-day lives were actually born out of wars. And some war veterans and war supporters actually believe that progress and innovation actually comes out from wartime. Economies actually boom post-wars, and war is actually a good thing. I have my reservations on that. I'm not going to comment on that. But the truth is, in the internet, aerosol spray, the microwaves, a lot of other technologies that we're using today were basically developed and researched upon to help advance the war initiatives between countries. Right, the second takeaway from the book is about the bombers themselves. Very much in particular about how bombing was done during World War II. And of course there were these bombers before World War II actually broke out who were actually thinking about a more effective way of winning the war. Of course there wasn't a war at that time, so they didn't have space or an avenue to actually test their theory. So most of it was tested in the mind. Them talking about the idea of having air power win the wars more effectively, while they kill less people in the process rather than killing a lot of people in the process. So most of it was discussions at that time, but sooner enough the World War II actually broke out, and there was a war between Germany and England, and of course the United States got pulled in. And at the time, how they actually do bombing was pretty much what they call morale bombing, where they would load up their bombers with thousands and thousands of bombs and have those bombers fly over a country, in this case Germany, and just so decides to let go of these bombs and flatten the whole city. Now these bombs, they were not targeting specific locations on the ground. It was just thrown everywhere, and bombs just detonated itself, and houses collapsed, and of course innocent people died along the way who were not part of the war. And they call this kind of bombing morale bombing. The fact that cities are flattened, the people's morale will actually drop along the way, and inevitably they will all kind of like surrender themselves to the enemy that was coming to bomb them, right? So the Germans had the same idea, the same concept of flattening England at the time, UK at the time. And they found out that the morale bombing wasn't so effective. Actually, it caused a lot of lives. A lot of people died from it. But the human spirit and the love for their country, basically the only country they have, still lingers on, and it became a strength to fight back. And that made morale bombing not so effective eventually. So who are these mafia bombers who decided that morale bombing is not the way to go? Well, there were this bunch of air bombers who actually wanted to change the way wars were won through the air. And of course bombers were used, but the only difference is that instead of morale bombing, that means spraying all of the bombs onto the ground, they subscribed to this thing called precision bombing. The ability to identify a target and have that target blown up without affecting the homes and places around it. And why and how is this important? Well, if you can target a German aqueduct that supplies water to the whole city, well, you basically starve the whole city. If you actually target an airfield, you will render your enemy disabled from the air war, right? If you hit any of the energy grids, they won't have any electricity. So you're actually kind of like handicapping your enemy, but without killing a lot of people. And that was the objective of the mafia bombers. They wanted to win a more ethical war and not have too many people get killed along the process. So there were a couple of technologies that were coming together at the time. There was this thing called the Northern Northern Bomb machine that helped bombers actually target specific targets on the ground. It's not an easy feat. There are a lot of factors that involve in it, into trying to get a bomb to bomb a small part of the ground from a very high altitude. And this machine that was installed in the bombers were used. It's called a Northern Bomb site or bomb machine, and it was highly classified. So what happens is that the bombers will need to take a couple of measurements in terms of altitude, time of the day, the wind speed, the angle of the plane, and many other things to be inputted into this Northern Bomb site machine. And they will look into this viewfinder that will tell the bomber exactly when to release the bomb. And the bomb will actually land at the spot. At the time, there was not much computerized technology to actually guide missiles or bombs, not like today, but it was highly accurate. So to be able to do that is quite amazing. You can imagine, like, if you're in a car and you're driving at high speed and you have a bottle of Coke and you're trying to throw it into a trash can at that speed, would you be able to do it? Well, it's going to be very hard. Now imagine that if you're in an aeroplane, at a very high altitude, you can't really see where your bomb site is. You're traveling at high speed. How are you going to get a bomb to land on a house? So that Northern bomb site machine actually could do that. And that was revolutionary at the time. The pilots were even trained to destroy the machine if they do ever get into an air crash. That's their high priority role as a bomber, because they didn't want it to be in the hands of the enemy. It's pretty cool. A little bit of history there, and that was what made the Mafia bombers who they are today. The ability for them to reach their objectives. Okay, my third takeaway is about a bomb called the Napalm bomb, which was developed at Harvard. It was tested there on a lake, and it was blown up while people were playing tennis. They didn't know the application for that at the point, but it was eventually used for bombs. So what napalm is really a highly combustible gel that will burn at a very high intensity for a very long time. And no one really much knew about napalm bomb. It was kind of like kept a secret, but it was eventually used as a weapon. So when it came to bombing, napalm was pretty much very useful when the Americans were fighting the war against the Japanese during World War II. During that time the Japanese homes were all pretty much made of wood, and there were no concretes at the time, and they were stacked pretty much very close together. So napalm bomb was a weapon of choice, because if they were to launch the napalm bombs onto the city of Japan, you literally burn the whole city into rubbles. These bombs will land on the ground and it will explode, and it will spit out this gel that will stick onto the rooftops of the Japanese homes, and it will keep on burning, and it will eventually burn the whole city, because first of all, the lanes to get to the homes to put out the fire were too small for the fire brigades to go through, and there weren't enough fire brigades to actually wipe out or put out all of the fire, because this is actually napalm. I mean, you put water on it, not necessarily the fire will actually go out. So napalm was used, and of course a lot of people died along the way. Cities were flattened by napalm, pretty drastic. And it was something that was going against the Bomber Mafia's objective and ideals of what a war should be. Innocent people were being killed. So when the war started to progress and World War II came by, the atomic bomb was also being developed at the time, the Manhattan Project. Now this was actually a bigger bomb, and it is radioactive, of course. If it explodes, radioactive elements will come onto the ground, and a lot of people will actually get all this radiation, and they'll actually die from it. It's quite nasty. But napalm was spread wide, and it creates a lot of destruction at a wide scale. Atomic bomb only requires one bomb. It creates much more. It actually damages and flattens the city even more effectively. So they have only one bomb. Now, during that time, they were talking about precision bombing, and of course, during my second takeaway, precision bombing was only able because of that Northern bomb site machine. And how that tied together was that they had the atomic bomb and the Northern bomb site machine at their disposal. And during that turn of event, both were loaded into a bomber, and that's how they had the ability precisely placed where the atomic bomb should land, which is basically in the middle of the city. And they also had a bomb that would be able to incinerate and flatten a whole city, just one bomb. So that two turning points of event kind of came together and stopped World War II, and also created a lot of damage in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And that's where the book kind of left me at the end. Were the Bomber Mafia bombers, were they right along? What were the challenges along their road towards precision bombing? And mind you, today most bombs that are being laid on in Middle East and all these war-torn countries are basically very much precision bombing. But in the past, a northern bomb site would be able to land a bomb probably on a home. Today, with technology and satellite sensors and computerized missiles, you literally can land a missile or a bomb on a rooftop. That's how precise bombing has become. Along the way, a lot of people, there are less people dying from bombings compared to last time. But at the same time, precision bombing had a place in World War II. So that was pretty interesting in the way the book ended. But of course, what I'm just explaining here is just a very broad sense of what I got from the book. There's a lot of details that Malcolm Gladwell actually uncovered and explained accordingly, and how the historical events and how different parties were involved in the outcome of precision bombing. And that's what I really like about the book. So do enjoy the book. I got my book from Audible, so I listened to it most of the time, and it was narrated by Malcolm Gladwell himself. Pretty interesting. You might want to try out that book. So enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll be talking more about books as I go along, the books that I'm reading. And also don't forget to check out the new Kindle Paperwhite 11. It's broader, much easier on the eyes, especially for me. It's now reading like a proper book because of the width, and it's got warm lights behind it, so I can read in the dark with warm lights, but I can't really read in the dark with white light. And Kindle Paperwhite 11 is pretty cool. Check it out. Thank you for listening, and catch you in the next one.